that.
All right, now we're on. Hey, everybody. Everybody hear us okay? Steve and I were just sitting here talking. We kind of lost track of time. If you can hear me, throw your thumbs up.
Uh-oh.
It says I'm up. Hey, Backwoods, can you hear us? Hello.
Oh,
Backwoods says we're
there's a
up.
thumb up.
Yep, there's a thumb up. Okay, how is everybody doing?
Hey,
Yep,
Uncle Al.
there we go. Hey, Uncle. Why don't you do the roll call, Steve?
Let's see. Hold on. I got to find everybody in here. I got to start with Shiloh. Hi, Shiloh. And Westwind's in there. And, of course, Uncle Al's there. And Backwoods is there. Let's see. Bradley Height, how you doing? I think that's it. As far as
Ryan
I
the
can see.
Gamer. Ryan the Gamer came in while you were talking.
Oh, okay.
Hey, Bradley, how you doing? All right, you guys, everybody, tonight we're going to talk about earthquakes. You guys out there on the West Coast know about earthquakes, right?
A little bit.
Yep. Okay, it says, contrary to the legend, earthquakes are actually caused by the movement of tectonic plates. I had some pictures for you guys, but I didn't get to go out and run any copies off, so there are ways to show where it shifts, but I don't have them for you. And it says that the U.S. has its fair share of fault lines. If you guys think it's just the West Coast that gets earthquakes, it's not true. We actually have another fault line in the United States. It's called the New Madrid Fault Line. And that fault line actually covers, let's see, covers states like Missouri, Tennessee, Arkansas, and Kentucky. And they're saying that those states actually are in more, I said the right word is, they are more likely to have earthquakes than the people on the West Coast, because that fault line is actually one of the worst ones in the United States. So what it makes the earthquakes so volatile is because you don't know when they're coming. The shifting underneath the earth of the tectonic plates, I hope I pronounced that right, is actually moving whether we know it or not. And there's other things that can cause earthquakes besides those plates moving around underneath the ground. It can actually occur either by a meteor hitting the earth or even a volcano going off could cause an earthquake. Anything where that jars the earth is like if they're testing nuclear devices, if they shoot one off and it's a big enough one, that could cause an earthquake. What else do they say? Shoot, I just went brain fart dead. Uh, PG-12 bill.
Yeah, I just got the little one on her lap thing to watch it.
I know, I caught myself.
Put it on.
Put the headphones on. It said that they can stretch as far as 1,200 miles, and they usually last between a few seconds, 2 to 3 seconds, all the way up to 10 minutes. They could last up to 10 minutes, and sometimes back in the 1800s, I believe they said they had one that lasted 60 minutes, and that was in Missouri. If Jason was in here, he'd probably be able to help me out there. But it lasted for 60 minutes, and it was felt as far east as Massachusetts and Pennsylvania. And they had side tremors or the aftershocks that lasted up to 21 days. So that's pretty substantial considering that's in the middle of the United States, Missouri. I consider that in the middle of the United States anyway. And what makes earthquakes dangerous is that they're impossible to predict. There's no telltale sign about when they're going to happen. And while they can study about how they work, they cannot predict when they're going to happen. So that's what makes them 10 times worse than a volcano. So I'm going to give it over to Steve here for a minute, and he's going to talk a little bit about what happens on the West Coast, because I'm not really sure about that. Seattle really never had any. We've had a few tremors, but no major earthquakes there. Even though we're on the same fault line as California, we have had some aftershocks from there, but really they're just sitting there on a time bomb waiting for it to happen because of all the volcanoes that we have up there. So I'm going to turn it over to Steve here for a minute while I get my notes put back together here. I just went totally blank.
All right, thanks, Will. I appreciate it. Hey, so this morning after I kicked everybody out of the house, I got up and went on the USGS website. If you guys don't know what that is, it's a really good government-run website that has all of the earthquakes. It has a whole bunch of information. If you've seen some of my videos, I take stuff from there and put it on there. So at 8:30 this morning, there was a 4.3 in Redwood Valley. There was a 2.6 in Puerto Rico. There was a 2.6 in Wyoming, and a 3.1 in Nevada, and a 2.5 in Kettleman City, that's in California, and a 3.3 in Baraga Springs, which is down there by Westwind, and a 4.1 in Austin, Nevada. Those are just the first ones I pulled off, just to, I don't know, kind of illustrate that they happen all the time. And for most of us in California, we really don't think about it. The ground moves, and we're like, okay, whatever. It's got to get up to like a 5 or 6 before we go, and start running for the hills. With that in mind, I pulled up some other stuff if I can find it here again, because I know everybody likes to make fun of California. But for you guys that don't know, the big one that everybody kind of knows about outside of California is the New Madrid fault line, or as they pull it up, when I pull it up here and it's all scientific, it's the seismic zone. So the New Madrid one, there was an earthquake in 1811. And this one affected, or can affect, 8 American states. So when I did this, I tried to involve as many states other than California, because everybody thinks earthquake, California, but this can happen anywhere. So the New Madrid zone covers Illinois, Indiana, Missouri, Arkansas, Kentucky, Tennessee, Oklahoma, and Mississippi. And that's like the second one everybody knows. If you get into the whole emergency stuff, everybody's like, oh, the New Madrid, it's going to happen. Well, there's some other ones. There's the Eastern Tennessee seismic zone, and that covers Alabama, Southwest Virginia. It says it's a small one, though, but it still affects places. I got to make sure not do this. The next one's the Virginia seismic zone, and some of these places I won't have a clue where they're at, but just for you guys that live out that way, Mineral, Virginia, Richmond, Atlanta, Illinois, Barry, I think it is, New Brunswick, a whole bunch of places like that. And then for all you guys that live in the Appalachians, and I know I'm not saying that right, the Northern Appalachia seismic zone, that covers the Appalachian Mountains, New Brunswick again, New England, Boston, the Appalachian Mountains. And not to leave anybody out, there's the Wabash Valley seismic zone, and it had a 5.1 in 87, and then in 02 it had a 4.6. That was in Lawrence, Illinois. Then you got the South Great Lakes seismic zone, that's Pennsylvania. And not to leave out our Canadian friends, the Western Quebec seismic zone. And some of these I'm not even going to try to pronounce. So Ottawa Valley, Eastern Ontario, Western Quebec, Montreal, And it's some place that starts with the T and is obviously not a language I know how to speak. Cornwall, Laurentian Mountains. So just the reason I bring that up is because, everybody thinks, oh, it's just going to happen in California. Well, there was one back in the Kansas area a while back. And all of a sudden, all my buddies from the Midwest, hey, Steve, what do we need? What do we got to do? I had fun teasing them all.
Yeah, it's the United States is actually on a giant fault line. Japan, they have earthquakes all the time. They're like California. When they go off, they don't really do too much. It shook again. Japan's really bad for earthquakes.
Well, the good thing about Japan and us is we're kind of set up for it. The buildings are made to be able to handle it. I had a friend of mine that he actually lives in Japan, and he teaches English out there. And if you knew him growing up, he probably wouldn't be the guy you want to teach a kid English, but that's what he does out there. Got a hold of him through Facebook and stuff after it happened. And, they were good because he was in Tokyo. And of course, Tokyo's built to be able to withstand that. It's the places outside of the areas that you would normally think about that I think the effects of an earthquake would be worse.
Yeah, so actually we live in a pretty dangerous world. Earthquakes are the biggest killer of people because they're not predicted for. You cannot predict them. And I wish I had been able to bring those pictures. It shows the tectonic plates better than I can explain it. And it's not just the plates rubbing together. There's actually I'm just going to give an example of Hawaii, the big volcanic action they had there. Some of the pictures and illustrations that I was looking at when I was doing my research is the volcano ash of the volcano erupts out of the volcano and it flows down over the land, but it's also going down into the faults of the I believe it's called the Ring of Fire. That's the fault line that's outside in the water on the west coast there.
Yeah, you're right. It's called the Ring of Fire.
Yeah, and that is the volcano erupted there in Hawaii. It was showing that the lava, even though it was flowing down into the ocean and cooling it off and stuff, it could actually go down and cause another earthquake from the bottom of the ocean. I can't remember what that's called. They had a name for it, and I just can't think of it. I thought for sure I would remember it because it was a good name, but I don't. But if you actually look at the San Andreas fault line that runs up the west coast between Oregon and California and Washington, all along that fault line are volcanoes. And any one of those volcanoes could set off the fault line and cause eruptions. Now, out in the Midwest, they're saying that it's just it could be the earthquakes could be actually caused by now this is just what they're saying. I don't hardly believe it, but they're saying it could be coming from fracking of the oil wells and stuff like that. The directional drilling of oil wells or fracking, whatever they call it. They're saying that it's pushing against the tectonic plates, making them shift too much, and that's what's causing earthquakes back there. But I find that hard to believe because if you look into the history of earthquakes, they had an earthquake in, I believe it was 1811, and it lasted for 2 years or 3 years, I believe. And that originated in Missouri. Well, I don't think back in the 1800s they were drilling for oil, or I don't even think they knew about fracking back then, So it's kind of hard to make that case. I just wanted to bring it up because it was in the stuff I read. But that lasted for 2 years, that one earthquake did. It lasted from 1811, I believe, to 1813 or 1814. And that was a big enough volcano that they felt the aftershocks and they called them afterquakes, or what they were calling them, all the way from those states that Steve mentioned, like Kentucky, Tennessee, think it was Pennsylvania and parts of Illinois. Those all those states were having afterquakes just from that one quake, and that was back in the 1800s. So I think that those guys are probably due for another one. So, well, it just goes to think, if they're predicting that the fracking is causing it, it could shift the plates some more, I suppose. I don't know. I'm not a geologist. I don't swear to have all the answers. But we could do some stuff to prepare for it. Some of the things that we could do is, we all learned this one in school, is drop, cover, and hold. And that's an old one from, who knows, I think it's the American Red Cross. Not really sure. But it's another thing is you can secure any of the movable objects in your house, like refrigerators, stoves, anything big. You can secure it to the floor so that as it's moving, you're not going to be smashed or suffocated or anything by one of those objects. Another thing is you don't store any heavy items on a high shelf. I think they're trying to tell you not to put a refrigerator up higher. But it's I guess microwaves would be heavy. It depends. They're getting smaller and smaller these days. I bought one for my kid, and it's only like this big. So another way is if you feel the tremble, go out and turn off your gas lines, the gas coming into your house, and your water lines. They're telling you to turn them off, and then store chemicals and flammable items properly to avoid the spillage of them, and store them in a well-ventilated area away from you and the heat. What do you think, Steve?
Well, the first piece of advice I'd give everybody that's never been in one is they're kind of fun as long as stuff isn't falling on you. There's usually two types. There's the quick, the ground shift, and you go like, what the heck was that? And then the fun ones, if you can pick a fun one, is where the ground kind of moves like waves, which
roller coaster.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. When I was a kid, I got caught in one outside. We were all out there playing ball or whatever we were doing, and the ground started just waving, and you literally could see the waves coming as the ground moved. And at some point, we all just sat down because we were getting seasick. The biggest thing, though, and this isn't just for earthquakes, this could be for any kind of emergency preparedness, is I know for those of us that live in California, ever since I was little, my mom always had a pair of shoes by my bed. That's just where my shoes went. Because one of the biggest things that happens during an earthquake is things fall down, they break. So glass breaks, there's debris everywhere, and you don't want to get it in your foot. I mean, you could be out there, in your nightgown or your underwear, but you don't want to be out there barefoot because there's going to be stuff everywhere. During the earthquake in '89 in San Francisco, I can't remember what it was called off the top of my head. My cousin was up there, and he was in an area that got hit really bad. And he said in some places, the storefronts, when they shook loose and all the glass came out, there was 2 or 3 feet of glass just laying on the sidewalk that, you couldn't walk through because it's glass unless you had shoes on and stuff. So that would be the number one thing. And that applies to all kinds of stuff, not just earthquakes. But I know most of us, hey there, West Wind, get you some shoes and put them by the bed because I know you just moved down there. So tonight, you tell the wife, we need to put some shoes right here next to the bed in case everything starts rocking and rolling. Because honestly, in the middle of it, there's nothing you can do. You just hang on. Do that duck cover and hold on stuff if you can. But they tell you not to try to run out of buildings. But if you got a second, I'd rather be outside during one than inside during one, just because it's better to be outside.
Yep. Ryan says Loma Prieto, I guess.
There you go. Yeah.
Yep.
I
said that's where it was rolling.
Yeah, I was in boot camp when that happened. So, and I was in Marine Corps boot camp, real boot camp for the rest of
real boot camp.
And
hey, I was in that base right across the way from you.
Yeah, we used to make fun of those guys.
We used to make fun of you guys too.
we were out there, and all of a sudden they had us all get in a formation, and they all yelled and screamed for anybody from California. So we all separated, and we're like, "Uh-oh, what are we doing?" And then they want to know anybody got family in Northern California. And then we separated. We were like, oh no, what happened? And I got to make a phone call home a 2-second one, literally like, hey mom, is everybody good? She said yes. I'm like, okay, bye.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy. Yeah, they're telling you not to make sure that you secure your paintings to your walls. For years, I just did it so they wouldn't shift. You know how they shift on hangers?
Yeah.
So, the kid I would take my pictures, I'd put them on the wall, and then I would drill a hole on each side of the frame, and I'd put screws in there. And my mom would go just nuts. What are you doing? Well, I'm putting the picture on the wall. Well, it's got a hanger on the back. Well, that hanger ain't for nothing, It's going to make it fall down, or it's going to be crooked. This way, it's not going to happen,
Well, whatever can fall down will fall down when the ground starts moving like that.
Yeah.
There's just, if you haven't been in one, you don't get it. And the funny thing for me is having people outside of California around when one happens, because it'll be a small one that we don't even notice, and they freak out, and it's great.
Yeah, I suppose so. We got a couple of trimmers. I went to boot camp in San Diego, and that's why I was making fun of you, because the fence is the only thing that separates the San Diego naval boot camp from the Marine boot camp.
Yeah.
And we would be over there doing our obstacle course, and you guys would be out there busting your butts, oh, look at those. Yeah. But yeah, so I've been through some trimmers, but I haven't been through any major ones, and that's sort of why I asked Steve on tonight, because he's been in California his whole life. He probably understands earthquakes better than anybody. Well, maybe not anybody, but enough,
No, I appreciate you having me. Come on, hold on. I'm trying to answer Old Soldier, but I can't spell soldier, so it's not coming out. But that was a Marine, so I can't spell. Hey, while we're talking, a couple things that happen that folks don't really realize, even folks that live here in California, on the really bad ones, I took some notes on some of the earthquakes, like the Fort Tejon one they had a long time ago, 1857. But just as an example, there was a horizontal displacement of 29.5 feet, which I guess is 9 meters for those folks that don't use, regular arithmetic. But
like people up in Canada.
Yeah, the Canadians. People don't realize that the ground will shift either this way or it will shift this way. And it can go, I got 23 feet on the next example. The next example after that was 15 feet. So that's something that folks got to think about. If you're driving along on the freeway or something and you notice it, and it's weird when you're on the freeway, the thing you notice is the signs bounce. The freeway signs, they start bouncing, and you go like, what the heck was that? And then
trimmer,
yeah, if you got the radio on the right station, it'll come across saying that there's an earthquake taking place. I had that happen when I was littler. And then another thing that people really don't think about is the aftershocks that can go on, as you were saying, for days and days afterwards. But when you get the ground to go this way, or you get the ground to go this way, it severs all the water lines, it severs the gas lines, and you literally can see streets flooded with burning fire coming up out of them because the gas lines got severed too. And that's when I think everybody's emergency preparedness skills would come into play. The medical, taking care of people, the knowing how to put fires out, just the idea that you've already mentally gone through some of this, and you might be a little calmer than your neighbors that are freaking out, especially if they just moved to California, West Wind. You might be the only one going, hey guys, we need to do this, we need to do that. And yeah, they say to have, these little earthquake kits and everything, but most people in California don't, even though they tell us every year. Every year they have the Great California Shakeout in October. This year is October 17th, where they have schools and churches and government buildings and all that. The cities get together and they simulate an earthquake. They say, okay, this is what happened, and they give them the scenario, and okay, how do you deal with it? And even with all that going on, most people, we just really don't think about it. You guys live in other areas where you don't think about stuff that just freaks me out. Tornadoes freak me out. I don't know how you guys live anywhere there's a tornado. I just don't get that.
Yeah, it's easy. Like you are with earthquakes, we are with tornadoes. I have told the story a couple of times on here that when I was like in my 20s and I lived back in this country here, when they put a tornado watch out, we'd go running out to my buddy's farm and get up in his grain silo and peek out the top hole where they put the grain in. We'd peek out that hole and we'd watch the tornadoes bouncing across the prairie and stuff, and if they started bouncing towards the farm, all we had to do is drop down inside that silo because the silos are bolted to concrete pads. But that's when you're young and dumb, so.
Yeah, I was in the Fort Worth, Dallas Metroplex area one time, and we were doing some work stuff, and they had two, what's it called, funnel clouds or whatever, off in the distance. And there was me and some guys that, they mostly all lived in Los Angeles too, so we've never been around it. I mean, I had one guy with me that was straight from East Los, and we're like, okay, can we just get back on the plane and leave now? We just want to go. We don't want to see anything. No, this is good. Just get us back to California where there's earthquakes.
We deal with enough. Another thing they told you could probably evaluate your structure prior to an earthquake. I was reading an article when I was doing the research for this. There's a lot of people that can get, what do they call them, grants. If your house is not up to code, you can get a grant from the government, and they will give you the money to make sure that your house is in better condition to be able to withstand an earthquake. I didn't know that before I read the article, but that would make sense. Is if you're going to live in an area that is probably apt to have earthquakes, you want to make sure that your house is kind of stable, at least as stable as it can be to give you peace of mind. So the thing that they're saying is to have your home inspected, and if some of the things are not up to code, you can actually apply for assistance. They're calling them grants, but I suppose it's assistance. And it'd be probably like a college loan. You'd probably have to pay it back. I'm not sure. I didn't really check into it that well. I just was reading it in the article, and I thought I would just pass that along to you guys because I'm not sure everybody even knows about that. So if you live in an earthquake area and you own your home, have it checked out. And if you think it's not up to par, check into getting a grant. And you can do that through FEMA, is what they were saying.
Yeah, I know when we bought this house, that was part of the inspection process, is they have to make sure it's up to code for earthquakes.
Yeah, and they have a grant for it. I didn't know that. That kind of surprises me.
Yeah, there's still a lot of buildings in California that they haven't retrofitted, that they're still trying. The last big earthquake they had, well, not really, well, I guess it was kind of big, up there in the Napa Valley area. My oldest daughter lives up that way. In the town that she lives in, there was some old, I mean, really pretty buildings, but the entire facade of them just fell off, the bricks and everything else. And, they know they live in an earthquake area, but they just never got around to retrofitting all that.
Maybe you should tell her to check on getting a grant.
She didn't own a house then. She got one after that.
Well, we were talking before the thing that you were telling me about buying a house and you got to do this and do that and do that. Maybe get you some free money from the government. Maybe they'd help you buy some of those tools.
Yeah, there you go. I was telling Will how this is my first house I've owned, so all of a sudden I got to figure out how to fix everything. I'm like, I don't know how to do any of this. Hey, 88, Mark 86. Yeah, I live in the northern LA area, like right at the edge where Ventura is. Ain't no secret. I live in Thousand Oaks.
Yeah, he lives in the middle of everything.
Yeah, I live where everybody says you're not supposed to. Somebody's last man standing.
That's why he knows all that self-defense.
Hey, and sorry guys, I can't keep up on all these on the comments down here.
Yeah, they're going by pretty good. Hey, Chris, I didn't see you sneak in. I'm just gonna check real quick while we're sitting here. Yeah, we're having Corsair on tonight, you guys.
Hey, I'm just gonna say, Mark, you live in Northridge? Because if you do, you probably know as much about this as I do.
Cheryl has a question. Do sinkholes have everything to do with earthquakes?
Yeah, they can and can't. I know where we're at. Most of the sinkholes here, not like if you go to Mexico or the Yucatan Peninsula, they have different reasons for the sinkholes because of the way the ground is. But most of the sinkholes here are because I don't just use California slang. You guys know what I'm talking about. DWP, the local water power guys, they haven't fixed stuff in 100 years. So most of the sinkholes is when those pipes bust and the water starts blowing
Undermines.
everything out. But that's just for us here. In other areas, I'm not sure. But here, most of the sinkholes happen because of that.
Yeah, I was reading an article about sinkholes when I was doing the research. Excuse me, and they were saying like in the Midwest and stuff, there's a bunch of sinkholes that are actually caving in, taking in whole houses and everything. And they're saying that was from ruptured lines, gas lines, and water lines. That they rupture and nobody even knows it. And I don't know how they can get away with that because I thought utility companies kept pretty good track of their stuff, but apparently they don't back in this part of the world because it eats up houses, and then they just kind of write it off as, oh, it's an act of God.
Yeah, well, it's ridiculous here. There's sewer lines and water lines and all that stuff that, especially when you get closer to downtown LA, that they're over 100 years old. They know it. But the power water company place, they won't go dig them all up because it'd be too much of a hassle. Yet they have millions of dollars in extra money every year. So, but
yeah, too much of this out of their pockets.
Yeah, they just wait till it breaks and then they go fix it and then say, "Oh well, it's not our fault. It's 100 years old." Well, you knew it was 100 years old.
If you listen to the conspiracy theorists, they say the sinkholes are from the underground tunnels that run from coast to coast that the military's put in.
Well, we do have the one guy here. What's that really rich guy that does all that does the Tesla cars and all that? He built a tunnel, which I just laugh at since we're speaking about earthquakes. He built a tunnel in LA that he's trying to get cars to go through to go super fast and all that. Something Lusk, Martin or whatever, something Lusk. Somebody know that one? But yeah, I guess they're giving up on that one, just like they did with the bullet train.
Yeah, they were saying the military has tunnels that go from the west coast to the east coast, and from I can't remember, somewhere in the south part of the probably Arizona or something like that, go all the way up into Canada. They say they intersect, and they're saying that they're boring these tunnels, and that's why all the big sinkholes that are taking the houses and stuff. But I don't know. That would take an awful long time. That would have, if they have them that far and that expanded, it would have taken a whole lot longer than 100 years to drill that much of a tunnel.
Well, I'm sure somebody by now would have been walking down it with their cell phone.
Yeah.
Facebook Live, everybody. So whatever.
Yeah, those guys get to talk on some of these live streams, and it's unreal. You know, we don't have the technology to do that yet. I mean, we probably have pretty good technology, but not. I mean, I lived in Seattle. They have this huge boring machine in downtown Seattle that they're boring a tunnel underneath the city for the train that they have.
Right.
And that thing has only gotten like 500 feet in 10 years.
Yeah.
You know,
my whole thing with that is nobody can keep that a secret, right?
Yeah, it breaks down and everybody knows it, you know.
Right. How you doing one all the way across? I mean, even
the boring machine breaks down, they have to physically dig the city streets up to get to where it's at and expand that hole out big enough for people to get into to work on this thing. It's not something that they just go in, dig a little hole and pull it out. This thing is big enough to drive a truck through, you know. So there's no way that there's tunnels from the east coast to the West Coast.
Yeah, I seriously doubt that. Oh, hey, and I had one other thing that I wanted to cover, and I made a note of it just because I already know it's not right. But when you start talking about earthquakes, everybody wants to talk about standing in a doorway. And if you just brace yourself in the doorway, you'll be good. Well, like many urban legends, that one came because there were some earthquakes and they saw the old adobe buildings that literally they built out of mud. So you'd have the door here and everything else would be adobe. Well, this is the only frame part. The rest of it's literally just mud stacked up. So the rest of the building would fall down and they'd see the door frame there and go, oh, well, if I stand on the door frame, I'll be good. No, it just doesn't work like that. But it's one of those urban legends, kind of like the building the tunnels underneath the entire U.S., which made me go, oh yeah, wait, hold on, I remember this. So yeah, don't try to stand in a doorway. Find you something solid to get under. And another thing that they usually don't talk about is windows. Get away from windows because they'll shatter and that glass will go everywhere and get you.
Absolutely, those are all wives' tales. They might have said that back in the 50s, but
I know
I'm
when I
pretty
was
sure
younger,
they wouldn't do it today. Back in the 50s, they had some pretty uncalled for stuff. Like they would tell you to go under a table or be in the bearing wall in the middle of the house. All that stuff that just doesn't hold any air now, you know.
Yeah.
And also,
then, go ahead. No, go ahead.
Yeah, it says be familiar with your area's earthquake and tsunami rules. They're telling you to carry a whistle with you all the time, but I'm not going to do that. But they're telling you that at least know the warnings. Like even here where I live, they have, I don't know if you guys remembered the other day when we did the live stream, they had that long siren go off. And that was to let us know that we were under a severe thunderstorm watching, that we had a possibility of a tornado. So you just kind of learn to listen for that stuff. They also beep a big message across the top of our TVs here. It won't go away till they want it to, you know. So just be aware of what's going on around you. Situational awareness, what it comes back down to. And we as preppers, survivalists, whatever you want to call it, bush crafters, these are all things that we practice a lot. So we ourselves, we know all about this, but there's a lot of folks out there that don't. They go on with their everyday lives like, oh, well, you know, I get what I want today, so, oh, well. That's the thing is you just got to be situational aware.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. And I mean, the thing with earthquakes, there's really nothing you can be aware of other than, okay, the building is moving. Now what do I do?
Yeah, I'm walking into the kitchen sideways.
Yeah. And then I went and made a list of things I could find where all these different states besides California. I mean, the first one that I got was Washington, Oregon, and California, just because that was the first one on the list. But after that, states that have had earthquakes, and these aren't little ones. All these are above 5.5. Massachusetts, Missouri, Kansas, South Carolina, Indiana, Texas, Montana, New Hampshire. Actually, New Hampshire had two of them in a row. Montana, Wyoming, and Idaho, Colorado, Illinois, Pennsylvania, Virginia, and Oklahoma. I tried not to duplicate any, just to get the point across that it could happen anywhere at any time.
Yeah, it's not just California, you guys. We have fault lines everywhere. It's just California's luck of the draw that they happen more there than anywhere else. It's just like picking straws. Okay, whose turn is it? So if you think that you're living in a safe zone, you're probably not, because if you're not going to be earthquaked, you're going to be flooded, tornadoed, something. Something's going to be there to be in your way. Unless you're thinking about it all the time, you know, you don't have to like dwell on it, but just be aware that it happens. And what most things happen during a certain time of the year, like earthquakes are anytime. They don't have a certain time of the year. Like tornadoes are like April, May, June, July, something like that. But they can happen anytime as well. But the main months are those 4 months. And it's the same with flooding. They can happen anytime. It doesn't matter. But most of them happen in the spring, So these are just things that we as Americans and just not Americans, it happens worldwide. We people of the world actually just have to be aware of what happens in our area at what time of the year and be prepared for it. Comes down to being prepared.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, Uncle Al, I didn't forget New York City. It just was at the I think it was 4.2 or something like that. And come on, Uncle Al, for us, a 4.2 is like, yeah, nice ride. Okay, good. Wow.
I want another ticket.
Yeah, that's why I didn't include that one in that list I made.
That's about all I got. We can talk to the side chat now if you guys want. You guys have any questions or comments? We've been doing all the talking. It's you guys' turn. If you guys have any questions, put them in caps for us, will you? So we can catch it.
Yeah. Hey, Westwind, since you just moved here, there's a thing called earthquake weather that people will say doesn't exist, and the scientists will say, no, it doesn't happen. But yes, there is. When everything gets really still, and you won't know it until you feel it for the first time, but the first time you feel it, you're going to hear my voice in your head going, earthquake weather, just nothing's moving. It's just dry. It's kind of hot. And nothing moves. Like you don't even hear the bugs buzzing or anything. And everybody that's been in California their whole life goes earthquake weather, except for the scientist. So
yeah, that's how it is here for the tornadoes. It gets really dark. The sky gets really dark, really fast too. I mean, you can be sunshiny and you can be in your house. You walk outside and there's suddenly a black cloud over your head, and you don't hear the birds chirping. You don't hear the bugs aren't buzzing. And you're looking around. You're saying, "Oh shit," So just be aware of what the signs are.
what was somebody else said something on here? I forgot it somewhere. Caitlin said that when the New Madrid went, that it turned the Mississippi River backwards for a while. Yeah, that's true. When the last time that one went, it actually changed the course of the Mississippi for you guys out that way.
Yeah. Oh, Westwind says he knows about them earthquakes. He said Seattle does get them.
Hey, Westwind, I'm having so much fun since you moved out here, right? I just have fun harassing you about it. Hey, and Westwind, you kind of are a good-looking fella. You might want to keep the rape with you now that you're down here. Yeah.
Ryan the Gamer says they have fault lines in Georgia.
Yeah, I think that was one of those seismic zones. It was funny. I was looking up fault lines, and then all of a sudden it said, "Did you mean seismic zones?" I'm like, "All right, great. We got a new name for it."
Oh, hey, Jamie. I didn't see you come in. How you doing? Any questions, comments? How are you liking California, Wayne?
Did you see his videos on the hike?
I did.
He seemed to enjoy the scenery, but not the people.
Yeah, I think it took him like 4 days to go 10 miles. He says it sucks. All right, you guys, we got 10 more minutes. What do you want to do? Let's see.
Oh, did you guys hear about the terror plot? They just broke up in LA today.
No.
Yeah, they I guess it's only in the local news like most of those stories, but they got a guy that he he was talking to an FBI informant and they had given him a bomb or what he thought was actually a real bomb. So after he took that, they arrested him, but he was going to go blow up some kind of meeting. I'm not sure what it was in Long Beach. And he had the bomb. He had bought some material to put in there, some nails and stuff like that to add shrapnel to it. He had an SKS. I can't say it right. One of those old Russian rifles, the Maz. I can't say it.
Moss.
Yeah, he had one of those old rifles, and then some other kind of SKS, and he was ready to rock and roll. The guy had been in the army, and he had deployed over Iraq and stuff, and he'd come back and got out. I guess he's been out like 4 years. They're not really coming all the way out. Before I got on here, the last thing I said or seen wasn't coming completely out, but he said he wanted to be ISIS and all that good stuff. And yeah, he was going to blow stuff up this weekend and they arrested him on Friday.
Uncle Al's giving him crap too.
Uh-oh.
Everybody wears spandex there. He's Jamie saying Mosin Nagin.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, I can't say it right.
Nagin. I don't know how to pronounce it either.
Hey, Westwind. Yeah, did you guys hear about the shooting that we had in Poway last week? What day was that, Westwind? Like Thursday or no?
I heard something about that.
Yeah, so it's finally came out how that one ended. So the guy walked in to the synagogue and he started shooting people. And then there was a guy in there that I believe he was former Army. He was something before that. And then he went in the Army. And this guy gets the biggest pair of Kahuna awards for the month. He literally unarmed, no knife, no gun, no nothing. He just started running at the guy and showed him his boar face and started screaming at him. And the guy dropped the gun because most of those guys that do those shootings are fucking cowards.
Yeah, I agree.
He dropped his gun and ran out of the building. And this hard charger just grabbed a hold and kept chasing the guy. The guy jumped in his car, grabbed another rifle. The dude started punching the door of the car and scared the guy so bad he dropped the rifle. Yeah, and tried to start the car to get out of there. And then inside the synagogue was a off-duty border patrol guy who got the word that something was going on, and he grabbed his pistol and he ran out there and confronted the guy. And if I remember right, the guy took off and the cops got him a little ways later down the road. And like most of these cowards, he gave up as soon as the police showed up and he was going to be met with some resistance and some force. He just gave up. But the moral of the story is, man, that guy has got some big brass to just bum rush that guy empty-handed like that.
Wayne says he's 5 miles away from there.
Yeah, I remember you saying that, Wayne. Yeah, I don't think that guy does any running there, Wayne. I really don't think I think that's probably why the guy was able to get away from him while he was running at him, is because he was just clanging too much while he was trying to go. Yeah. No, they had that on the local news. The guy was telling the story and he's like, I don't know. I just knew I had to do something. So I just went after him.
Somebody says you can buy one of them for $69 at Big Five.
Yeah, I think you still can get those there. Yeah, I know the Big Five around here, after we had that shooting here, they kind of stopped selling anything that looked bad. The last time I was in there, they didn't have anything, not even little 22s that looked like ARs. It was all, they had some hunting rifles, some shotguns. I don't think they had any of those. They used to have those, but I don't think they had those even in there anymore.
Yeah, Walmart, it doesn't even sell the pellet BB guns that look like ARs here. Yeah. They have just the regular rifle kind.
Yeah.
But they don't sell anything that looks like an assault weapon.
Well,
That's I was being facetious there.
yeah, no, trust me, I get used to hearing that. I hear how they say everything here, so and it scares
Yeah.
everybody. Scares Jack
I
Gunn.
don't believe there's assault weapons. I believe there's crazy people out there
Oh, hey, Kaylin.
that
Yeah,
want to be
I'm sorry, I
heroes.
forgot to mention that. There was a lady that when the guy came in and started shooting, a lady stood up, and I think she's the only one that died. She stood up and got hit, and then the rabbi was telling the story that he was freaking out, of course, and she hit the ground, and when she hit the ground, he looked up, and the guy started shooting at him, and he put his hands up to try to cover himself, and he actually lost one finger, I think it is, that just got clean shot off. And then that's when the other guy bum rushed him and the guy took off running.
Well, we're getting Uncle Al wound up.
Well, Uncle Al, I won't say they're Democrats, but I will say that the guy in Poway and this guy today or Friday or whatever, they're desperate here in the local news. They're desperately trying to attach them to the right wing because that's what they think they're supposed to do. They went so far as to say the guy in the synagogue, he used right-wing verbiage by saying stuff about Jewish folks, which like that's only a right-wing thing to say. And me and my buddies were talking about it, and I'm like, well, obviously they've never heard Louis Farrakhan talk because he goes and he is not right-wing.
Yeah. Yeah, I try to stay out of the politics game of it anymore. I mean, we just need to get together as a nation. To heck with the left or the right.
Oh, absolutely. I'm so tired of all that too.
All right, anything else? We know, Uncle Al. We know.
Uncle Al's gonna stay on that.
We heard you the first 2 times, 3 times. Hey, FFP, how you doing, my friend? Good to see ya.
Oh, absolutely, West Wind. The guy in New Zealand even said he wasn't. He's like, I'm not right wing. I'm not any of these things, but you guys are going to all say I am. And he set them up, and they are doing exactly what he said they were going to do.
I can't pronounce that word, Wayne.
Psychotropic.
Is that something like LSD then, or?
Now that's all the stuff they give, like Ritalin and all that other stuff to people that aren't acting right.
Yeah.
You know, back when you were younger, when they used to just smack them upside the head.
Yeah. Now they give them drugs. Yeah.
Yeah. Now you got youngsters that are just so drugged up, it's ridiculous.
I was watching a thing on TV the other night. I think it was on History Channel. I think they were talking about the deep dark web, about how easy it is to get drugs and stuff in there, and that there's actually guys here in the United States that buy all those illegal drugs from Europe and places like that, China, and then they just sell them on the street here because they can. They're cheap. This one guy had a wad of money this tall, you know. He said that he can get anything over in China or Asia or Europe, because a lot of those drugs that are illegal here, the psychotic drugs and stuff like that, the painkillers, they're all over the counter there. So they just buy them there and have them shipped over here. And they were interviewing those guys, and they interviewed a couple of the ICE agents that try to stop them. The ICE agents say that they can't keep up with the amount of drugs coming in, so everybody is just going crazy. I don't know. I don't think I'd want to be in that deep dark web. I think that's where the cops come to find you.
Yeah, I would just stay out of that thing. I don't mess with that at all.
Yeah.
As far as the drugs coming over, I mean, it's being here in Southern California, it's just down the road from us. It just comes right across the border.
Yeah. Yeah. These guys were pretty serious. They had masks over their faces, and they were saying how easy it was to get them. And the ICE guy was even saying, he was saying that they can open packages that are marked from overseas by companies. But if they're coming over saying they have a return mark of just a name and it's to a personal address, they can't open those packages. So they're saying that so the companies over there know they're sending illegal stuff to the United States. Instead of putting their company name in the return address, they just put their personal name up there and then the person's name down here, and then they ship it across because the federal agents can't open packages for personal mail to somebody unless it's from a company. Say XYZ Pharmaceuticals sent something to Will at Just in Time Prepping, then they would have the authorization to open that package. But if somebody in the company just used their personal name in the return address and sent it to Will at Just in Time Prepping and sent it over here, they couldn't open it because it's personal mail for me.
Yeah, I don't know about. I got a bunch of buddies that work customs and immigration and all that stuff, and they never told me that. The problem that they have is the amount of stuff. Like where I used to work at was in the harbor, and you guys would not believe just the thousands and thousands and thousands of containers that come in every day, all the time. And they had this giant X-ray machine that was like it was big. It had two sides that went down. And they'd drive a semi into the middle of it, and they'd run this thing down there. Well, they could only do like I talked to the guys. I don't remember the exact number. Say like 10 an hour, but you have 300 trucks going out in an hour.
Yeah,
so they just don't have the manpower or the resources.
Yeah, that's another thing they said. They said they just simply can't keep up with it.
Oh, here's a funny one about California. So everybody hears about Malibu, and they're like, "Ooh, that's where all the rich people live." Yeah, that's also where they take the boats from Mexico, from the Tijuana area, and they'll come all the way up the coast, and they land them right there, and they'll meet people right on the beach in Malibu. So yeah, there's Hollywood types there or whatever, but yeah, there's also drug people bringing all the drugs in right there.
Yeah, I don't get it. They're never going to stop it. They're never going to stop it, but they could slow it down if they just had enough people to do it. That's what they need to do is hire more federal agents. They talk about unemployment, hire more federal agents,
Well, it's kind of hard to hire that many people and get quality. That's the issue we were having before I retired. They were trying to hire so many people that they lowered the standards, and you could tell it was.
Well, any company will do that if they expand too fast.
Yeah.
Then they start not watching the quality of people they're bringing in.
Yeah, and that's just, nah.
I've been there and done that. I was a production manager for years. I started out in a real small company that was just in a small warehouse, and by the time I left there, they were in this multi-million-dollar building, And I started out a peon, worked my way up into management, and by the time they got to growing so fast that they needed even a bigger building, they were starting to lower their standards for who they brought in the front door. And that's just for production, So just imagine, put that into a scenario of military or federal agents, or you could do that for anything. The more people you need, the lower the standards go.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Trying to keep up on some of the comments.
Yeah, me too.
Got finals this week. Oh, good luck there, old soldier. Hopefully you pass them tests.
All right, you guys. Anything else?
No, I'm good if you're good.
Wayne says he don't want to legalize because it creates more government regulations and oversight. He's probably right there.
Well, having spent a lot of time around folks that had drug issues, I have issues with the whole drug thing because I've seen the end result of it where other folks don't. They just see party, 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 and
Yeah.
So.
Like I said, I've been around a long time. I've seen a lot of stuff, and just not worth it to me. I've seen some of my friends die. It's just not worth it. Go pop open a beer or take the bottle off the Jack Daniels or whatever, you know. That's how I did it, you know. Open the bottle of Jack Daniels and throw the cap away, because that means you're going to have a party.
Yeah. All right, Cheryl. Thank you.
All right, you guys. If there's nothing else, we're going to get out of here. Thanks for coming, everybody. I really appreciate it. I got a twin. All right, guys. I'm going to stop her now.
All right, guys.
You guys, thanks for coming in.
I appreciate you having me.
Yep. We'll do it again, Steve. It's fun.
All righty.
All righty.